The views and opinions on the Craig L. Hayes Show do not necessarily reflect those of Westgate Resorts, ownership, or management. And now, on with the show.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Get your copies while they last. Stop the presses.
And now for something completely different.
There's no business like show business. Are we not entertained? Prepare yourself for a little sensory overload. Stand by to roll show intro. Roll show intro in 3, 2, 1, go. It's showtime. The Craig L. Hayes Show.
Hello, America, family, friends, and listeners all around this planet we call home. This is It's Showtime, the Craig L. Hayes Show. And we are coming to you, recorded from the Westgate Las Vegas Resort, here in Las Vegas, in the International Showroom in Elvis Presley's dressing room. And we're going to continue doing our interviews with people who work behind the scenes in Las Vegas showrooms and conventions and lounges, and just made the city happen with show business and conventions and such. But before we get going, I'd like to just give a thank you to Cammie Christensen. She's the president of the hotel. She allows us to do this show. Don Rawls, she's vice president of marketing and entertainment. And John Peer, who's technical director for entertainment here at the Westgate Resort, Las Vegas. Thank you very much for letting us do this and continue recording these shows for posterity and talk about all the wonderful things that go on in Las Vegas and keep showbiz history alive. So today's show is going to be with a guy I have known for now 45 years, since 1980, and that just blows me away. Probably him too, that we've both made it 45 more years. So he was working as a journeyman when we were building Hollywood Jubilee back in 1980, and I came in as an apprentice, brand new into the hall, and he was already a journeyman working. And we're going to talk to him about his life and about his showbiz experience and the things that he's done in this town and in other places. And his name is Al Tallman. Al, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Nice to be here.
It is so good to have you here. I'm so glad we're having this opportunity to have a chance to chat about our history of Las Vegas and keep it going, and record it for the people in the future, that they can hear what it was like working in this town through the years that we did. So we'd like to start with a little bit about you, so people get to understand that who you are and what you've done over the years and where you came from, where you born, raised, high school, stuff like that. And then the magic question is going to be, and how did you get into showbiz? So the time is yours. Tell us a little bit about yourself, if you would.
Well, I was born in Toledo, Ohio in November of 44, and lived there till I was about 6 years old. From there, we moved down to Houston, Texas, where my father and my uncle had an industrial roofing company, and that didn't do real well. And my uncle had a hotel in a summer resort, Clark Lake, Michigan, and he brought us up to Michigan from Texas for my parents to be winter caretakers of the hotel and that property. And it had a summer theater, and it was a nice place. Anyway, it was a great kid. I could walk in the run of the kitchen, and I'd fix breakfast for my brother and I, whatever we desired. I was 8 years old that summer that we moved up, and then grew up in Michigan. Went through grade school and high school, and it was a great place to grow up. That resort, a lot of very successful people with cottages and kids that grow up around, good friends. But anyway, wandering off here.
That's okay. Yeah, well, we want to hear about your life, before showbiz, because people always think that we were just like born in some test tube behind the showroom, and then we slide down a pole and become stagehands. I was like, no, we've lived all over the world. People come from here, from work in this town from all over the country, all over the world. It's an amazing town to come to and be in showbiz.
Well, I finished high school, and a lot of the buddies of mine that their class senior trip was to Vietnam, and they were trying to draft me. My draft notice came, and I played it on the Air Force recruiter's desk. And lucky for me, he backdated it 2 weeks, and I was in the Air Force. And like my job in the Air Force, I was a helicopter mechanic and crew chief, and it was fun and exciting. And the tech schools were great, and I learned a lot. But I developed high blood pressure, and they offered me limited duty and taking me off flight status and actually instructing, or leaving the Air Force, and I got out. But I got out and I immediately went to work for a company called Skyway Aviation, and picked up an A&E apprenticeship, and got to fly more than I ever did when I was in the Air Force. 2 DC-3s, 2 Beech-18s. We had Piper Navajo, Beech Baron, and Beech Bonanza. We had 3 Cessna 150s in the flight school, and Cessna 182, a Cessna 172, and a Cardinal in the flight club. And we moved a lot of freight, and that kept me busy. Didn't pay that well, but I lived there, so I made a lot of money and saved it. And a friend of mine was the business agent for the IATSE local there in Jackson, Michigan, 172, Ron Haney. And he and I rented a home, and he invited me to go do spotlight work on a couple of concerts, and the pay was great and it was fun. And that's where I became a stagehand. Ended up got involved with that union, and went on from there. I do a lot of truck and bus Broadway at the University of Michigan and Michigan State, and we do a lot of rock and roll. And you're up running lights or setting lights up or tying power in one place or the other around Michigan. A lot of small locals in Michigan, and they would merge and help each other out when things were very busy. Anyway, I went on from there to do a little building, and I also ended up the business agent of 172. Managed, operated at Carroll's Development automated theater for about 3 years before I came out, and was a business agent from that office. I had a lot going. Anyway, my father-in-law was a dentist. I was also building dentures for him, setting teeth in wax and sending them out and getting them processed. But just renting that house and having my buddy had gone out on the raft with a group of kids, and I'd have to go to work at Skyway, and it was 7 days a week I was on call, and I was always pulling the cells off, and I was oil and grease from head to toe, or I was just dumping shitters, and the TC-3s are scrubbing out with a garden hose, puking, changing seats so we could put freight in and packing cardboard in, and got to do a lot of flying, going through customs in New York and up into St. Catharines, and with the Chevy parts that were stamped out at the Ford place, which kind of blew my mind. Found out then that a lot of those big automakers worked together for transmissions and would come from Chrysler for everybody gearing. It's interesting. Anyway, and then they sent them out and have them machined by whatever cooperation was using them. The castings from Ford. Remember loading pallets of stuff into Beech-18s and rolling it on pipe right up till we get the center of gravity in the airplane and get it off the ground, going around the clock so they could keep assembly lines going. But interesting, fun work. But stagehand has been great, and I saw that from my roommate and the work that he was doing, and they broke me in. I worked for about a year free doing projection work, and you'd relieve somebody, he'd get paid, and you do the projection work. And then I remember getting into the union in those days. they'd send you out of the room and they'd pass around in that particular local a cigar box with a hole in it, and everybody had a black and a white marble. And they'd put that marble in, and they'd vote on you were going to take you in or not, and they'd hand you that box when you came in. If it had a white marble, you had to wait another month. Luckily, I got in the first try.
Nice.
You got all black marbles. There's only like 8 guys. It's not a big local, you know. We had people that weren't members at work, but about 8 guys that made their living in it. We had 2 drive-ins, and we had 2 automated theaters and 2 regular manual single theater. But that got me into the business. And then the town has started to have problems. The Air-Equip Cooperation pulled out and went to California, and Goodyear Tire and Rubber left and went down into Ohio, and Clark Equipment Cooperation, who had begun there, left town, and a lot of the big businesses, Oldsmobile shut down in Lansing, and a lot of the machine shops in Jackson did work for Oldsmobile, and the economy took a dive, and I could see it coming, and I came out to Vegas on vacation, and could see it was here, and my wife and I and my 2 daughters moved out here in '78, and it's been great. A lot of growth, watched the town grow, and plenty of work, more work than I could handle. I turned down more work for a long time than I took, not because I wanted to turn down work, but you only do one thing at a time, and everything interfered with everything else, you know.
Yep.
But I never starved for work, and I was lucky because I fell in with Cinema Services, and people in Michigan who had gone on the road with Oldsmobile worked with Jimmy Brennan, and they all sent their hellos, and he kind of took me under his wing right away when I talked to him, and I ended up doing quite well with car shows and insurance shows and McDonald's and all the big shows. I ended up carpentering on Ed Carpenter for 35 years, and doing Olympics and Goodwill games with his son Bill Brennan, and being an LD out on the job and lighting different venues, and just it all grew and grew and grew, and I could never give enough thanks to anybody but the Brennans, between Barbara Brennan and Bill Brennan and Jim Brennan and Seamus. I did a lot of work with. Kind of made it for me, you know. I was here at the Hilton. The Westgate, it was the Hilton at the time, for about the only full-time steady job I ever had. I worked in the lighting here for 2 years and ran a spotlight and did a lot of show changes back in those days, you know.
Yeah.
When it went to a production show, I did not want to do a production show. I go stir crazy doing the same thing every night. I like the bounce. I like the change. I like to go work a movie or go do a game show or a commercial. I worked a lot with Sig Rogich and R&R Advertising.
Okay, good.
Did the American Way to Play for years. And did all the lighting and setting up of, got to meet a lot of big people, stars, you know. They'd call you and say, hey, can you get over to Bally's? And I said, what's going on? They want to interview some star. And we'd do the setup and shoot them. I can remember a place about this, that when Presley was here, he came in one day and he went out into the showroom, and he painted the faces and the hands black of the mannequins on the wall. Had anybody ever told you that story?
Yeah, he got up on a ladder and he was painting the...
Barbara Brennan had one over at Cinema and the entranceway for years until they moved away, but that was a good story, you know.
Yeah, he was a character on a lot of that stuff. Some of the stories I've heard about him was just, you know, I was here 30 years.
I got here after him too. So it was, those guys all worked with him. They said, he was a real character.
Yep. Yeah. Well, that's the overview is awesome. Let's go pick this apart a little bit.
Okay.
All right. You were in high school, and you went to school and high school, all that in
Michigan.
Michigan, And you said you had played football. You were like a
That was my sport.
football maniac.
I love football, and everything I did was for football. I went out for track, ran the sprints for football. My coach wanted me to play basketball, but I was a terrible basketball player. I'd foul out the first quarter. I remember him saying, "Al," he said, "I don't mind you fouling." He said, "But make sure they aren't going to make the foul shot when you foul them. In other words, you're going to foul them, don't they?"
Yeah.
But they let me play, and it was fun.
So, did you ever get an offer to a college for football or anything?
I had Muddy Waters and Duncan. Duncan had been one of my high school coaches come and scout me, and they said Hillsdale College, and they told me to come on out and walk on, and I'd be on, and it would work out. But my draft notice about the same time came, and I took that draft notice to the Air Force recruiter unopened and laid it on his desk, and he knew exactly what it was, and he backdated me 2 weeks. And I was in the Air Force. Probably saved my life, you know. But anyway, and that all worked out real well.
Yeah. Did you take any theater classes in high school or anything like that?
At the hotel my uncle owned, and we moved there when I was about 7 years old. We moved from Texas to Michigan. Excuse me, I was 8 years old when we moved up to Michigan. And there was a summer theater, the Clark Lake Players, and they do like 6 plays a summer. They do a melodrama, a musical. They do like No Nanette or Pajama Game and as a kid I got to go sweep out the theater, and I painted sets, and I was around theater. They'd allow all the children that lived near that theater to come in and watch rehearsals, and that kind of got me into.
That was your introduction,
got me close
basically.
to theater in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I ended up rooming with a 172's business agent, and he invited me to work as a stagehand with him, run a spotlight, and I learned to run that spotlight, and that led to many bigger, better things, you know.
Yeah, it's always interesting hearing how people got into showbiz. I've met some guys that basically where they were doing catering work and stuff like that, and just walked into a showroom and going, "What's going on in here?" And people tell them, and they're like, "I think I'd like to do this." And then they started.
Yeah.
It's it's the funniest stuff. Listen to how people get into our business that we call show.
Yeah.
It's just very interesting. So then, after high school, obviously you got your draft notice. Yay for you! Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, most of the buddies I went to high school class trip was to Vietnam. I lost some really good friends. Bill Scoville and Bob Walsh, really close friends. I was with them from 3rd grade through high school. And both of them were National Honor Society, and both of them were the top of their class, and they were just good people and good friends. I ride back and forth from football practice with my friend Bill Scoville, and I came home on leave, and he'd been killed, and I was in my khaki summer uniform, and I told my mother. She said, "We're going to the funeral." I said, "Of course." And she said, "You have to wear your uniforms." And I said, "No, Mom, I'm out of uniform. I can't. I have to wear my dress blues to a funeral." And she said, "You're going to wear that uniform. You're going to go." So I wore it. And the second lieutenant that was in charge of the burial service came up to me and he said, "You're out of uniform." And I said, "Yes, sir." I realized that I had my leave papers folded in my pocket. And I said, "My mother insisted that I wear the uniform." He said, "Well, if you'd have worn the blues, I'd have put you in the honor guard area." And I said, "Well, if I'd have known, I certainly would have worn my blues home." So I attended that funeral. That was a tough one. And then after I got out, my friend, I had a good friend, Doc Townley, and he had built a new beautiful home, and he called me. He said, "Al, having a lawn party. I want you to come on over." I said, "Oh, that sounds like fun." He said, "Bring your gloves." And something was up, and we took his Jeep and his trailer. We went over to Bob Walsh's farm. They had a dairy farm, and they grew sod for people's yards, and we picked up about enough sod to do that yard, and that was the lawn party. But Doc would do things like that for me every now and then. He was a great guy. Anyway,
So you were? Did you go to Nam too?
no.
Okay, so you got.
My orders came down to Nam. For Nam, I was they were air rescue, but I had passed out in a parade on an Easter Sunday and went down, hit my chin, and knocked off some teeth, and it was due to high blood pressure. And they put me in the hospital, and they couldn't get the blood pressure down, and they ran all kinds of tests. I was in the hospital for about 3 weeks while they tried to figure out what was going on, and they ended up saying it's probably hereditary, and they offered me limited duty and staying in the Air Force and instructing, because I really liked my job, and if I was going to do anything right from day one, it was going to be that job I was going to do. I remember in tech school laying out with a blanket over reading tech manuals, and I aced everything I ever took as far as test. Anyway, but I didn't want to stay as an instructor. If I couldn't fly, I wanted out, so they offered me a discharge, and I took the discharge.
Did you actually? Were you a pilot?
I was a crew chief.
Okay.
Crew chief and mechanic,
Okay.
So I spent a lot of time in a harness. Spent a lot of time flying in a co-pilot seat. They'd take you up. If you did any major maintenance and signed it off, maintenance officer would say, "You signed this?" "Yes, sir." "Get in." You take a ride. And it was interesting. He things. He said you could tell if you had blades out of whack, you could feel it in the collective, or in the cyclic. You could, and he'd tell you different things. The guys that were could run it up, run the RPM, get the rotor head and engaged, and they could put their hands on the side of that helicopter, and they could feel where the problem was. You had a main drive system to from the engine, or from the main transmission back to the tail rotor, different vibrations, or the tail rotor itself.
Wow.
So the guys are really good, and they teach you those things. It was interesting.
That's pretty amazing. That's pretty cool. That's just knowing your.
Yeah, well, the better you get at it, the more time you're around it. Just like anything else, the more you know, the easier it gets. And then I got out here, and Jimmy Brennan. We were starting to payroll a lot of big shows that were truck and bus, and they're coming in with chain motors and truss, and I told Jim I still owned my house in Michigan for about 6 years after I moved out here in case I had to go back, and I told Jim, I said, I'm going to sell that house in Michigan and take a second on what I've got here, and I want to go out and buy about 21-ton chain motors, and I want to buy enough truss to do a decent show. And I said, but I don't want to go into competition with you, but I think we need to do that. I said, we'll stage it here. We can sit and discuss what you think it's worth. And Jimmy said, you think there's money in it? And I said, I think it's going to be a gold mine, Jim. I do. And he had Timmy Kaiser start building that steel 24-inch box truss. And he sold the truss to the Thomas and Mack, and went over to A&D Scenery, and Timmy and Joe Reed and Randy Cardinal and the guys, and I even cut a lot of steel, built that truss that went into the Thomas and Mack. And I went in and put the 2-ton chain motor, 2-ton chain motors up, and rigged that all in. And then we started the rigging program with 720 here, and that was Jimmy Brennan. They just said, what do you think it's worth, Al? At that time, we were just giving department head pay to the guys that went up, and we came up with $45 an hour free climbing in the Thomas and Mack above the catwalks, and with $35 an hour working off the catwalks or at that height, and then $25 an hour for ground riggers. And that's where we started a rigging department in Las Vegas. And when the cost and the price went up and what you could earn went up, everybody wanted a piece of it. And we brought in 6 of the best riggers in the country. Dale Herman did, and we taught rigging class at the hall, and real rigging classes on how to safely do things, and also Jimmy gave them 8 chain motors. Jimmy went down and got 20 motors from Tony Calvi at West Coast Theater Supply in L.A., and leased them and kept them, and that's where he started with it. And we took 8 of those motors to the hall, and we put 2 guys on each motor, and they brought engineers from CM chain motor in, and they taught us how to break down the motors and set the clutches and how to deal with them to fix things. At the time, if they sold a 1-ton motor, they would not put the switch in so you could get to use it inverted, but they'd sell you the switch and you could put it in. But now you can get them with that spring-loaded switch, so you can run them upside down.
Yeah.
But a lot of history there, and that's where it started, and then that, of course, we got some good riggers that have come out of that, and I think we've got some of the best riggers in the country.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And we've
I
done
agree.
it, and people will say that, you walk in and you get something done, and I've been there, walked in, and people being unsure when we got there, but before we were done, they were like, "Holy smokes, you guys know what you're doing, don't you?" I started out with the laser rangefinders and laser plumbs. In the beginning, we just lay it out on the floor with chalk, and we'd drop a pen bob or whatever, and we'd hang that point. Well, it got to the point where you could put a laser plumb on that damn thing, and you could find that spot with that laser line right to the top, and you'd rig to it.
Yep.
And of course, I went out and got to rig with Eddie Kish and Kish rigging, and with
He's gotten huge. He got big so quick.
I did a lot of shows with him. I could go on the road
Nice
with him a
guy.
few times.
What a nice guy.
Great guy, really talented man. And then also Tony Calvi from stage rigging at San Francisco came in, and we did a lot of shows with him. And
Nice.
he actually teaches a rigging course up there, and so if you get, it's really intense, and well done.
Top end people, man.
And
I'm
then
telling
you got Jeff Rettinger, who's done really well with his Vegas rig. I just had dinner with him, and I would bring him in from the Hilton here. He was on the fly rail whenever I had a big job, because all I had to do was turn him loose. I didn't have to go tell him what I had wanted. He could go look at the plot,
Yep.
and he come up with better ideas than I did sometimes. And
Yeah,
Don McCall was another one.
we got some good, talented guys. We had, we had the best talent. Vegas had the best talent in the world, I think.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
But I want to pause here, and just basically, we've already come to the end of episode number 1. So, see, it goes quick. It just goes quick. So, anyhow, give me just a second here, and when we come back, we'll go back and talk a little bit about a few other things. Let me see where we going. Oh, nope, not that one. How about this one? Okay. All right, so we're going to take just a couple minutes break, have a little bit of water, and we're going to come back and talk to Al Tallman about more of his career and life in show business. So stand by, and we'll be right back. You're listening to It's Showtime, the Craig L. Hayes Show.